Welcome, dear listener. Settle into a comfortable position. Let your shoulders fall. Let your jaw soften. If it feels good, place one hand over your heart and one on your belly, and notice the slow, steady rhythm beneath your palms. There is nothing you need to do and nowhere you need to be. Tonight, you are invited into a quiet story, a soft story, a story that moves at the pace of breath and tide. In this gentle tale, we travel to a small seaside town where the air tastes faintly of salt and the wind knows everyone by name. Waves comb the shore in patient lines. Driftwood turns smooth as satin. Windows glow warm at dusk, and the moon comes early, never in a hurry. Our story is called The Shell That Carried His Voice. It is a story of hushes and glimmers, of words that arrive like sea's prey, and of a slow, tender recognition that does not startle the heart. You will hear the sea, you will feel the sand, and little by little, you may find yourself listening for a voice that speaks softly, as if it has always known how to be kind. If you like, breathe in for a count of 4, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out for a count of 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, gentle and easy, in and out. As you breathe, the story begins to open like a tide pool at low tide, revealing simple, shining things. And in that quiet, we begin. Morning arrives as a hush the color of pearl. The town is still, curtains stir, a kettle sighs and then falls silent. On the edge of this slow and friendly place, a woman named Iris steps barefoot onto the sand behind her cottage, a light cardigan resting on her shoulders, sleeves turned softly at the wrists. The beach is a pale ribbon, wide and patient gulls drift in loose white commas against the sky. The air is fresh in the way that feels clean behind the eyes. Iris likes mornings best. They move at her pace. She walks where the tide has smoothed the day into readiness, where small shells gather like punctuation ellipses of cream, commas of rose, small dots of quiet. She bends not to collect, but to greet, a habit of noticing, a way of saying I. See you to the small, shining pieces the sea returns. Her life is simple in kind and merciful ways. A small bookshop, sun-faded and loved, sits at the corner of the town square. She tends it and it tends her, offering pages that smell faintly. Of paper and patience, she keeps a vase of seagrass on the counter. She wraps books in brown paper when asked, tying each with twine as lightly as a breath. Evenings are for tea, for listening to the soft rattle of shells in a glass bowl by her window, for thinking the small, sweet thoughts that carry a person gently from one day to the next. This morning, something asks her to pause. It is small and ordinary in the way that real wonders can be. A shell half buried at the seam where wets and meats dry, a pale cream spiral with a blush of peach along its lip. It is smooth and warm to the touch, sun-kissed from the first light. She brushes a bit of sand away with the side of her thumb. The shell is no larger than the cup of her palm. It feels as if it were waiting. She lifts it to her ear, because everyone does, because we are taught early that the sea keeps its own echo. She expects the familiar hush, that soft, hollow wind. What arrives is not wind. What arrives is a voice, low and warm like dusk settling on a wooden porch. Not a full sentence, not a clear word, more a melody of someone who knows how to speak gently, a sound shaped like kindness. It hums along the spiral, round and sure, as if the curve of the shell were a small theater and the voice were a light moving softly across the stage. For a long moment, Iris does not move. She is careful, in the particular way we become careful. Around things that might break if handled with anything less than tenderness. There is no fear in her, only a careful kind of wonder. And in that quiet, the sound continues part lullaby, part breath, a tone that feels familiar in the bone-deep way that rain on a window feels familiar, that late afternoon sun on the sleeve feels familiar. She cannot place it, she cannot place him, yet the body knows before the mind. A gentle warmth spreads in her chest, like tea through a chilled cup. She lowers the shell and the sound fades, the way light fades when a hand passes over a candle still there, but quieter. When she lifts the shell again, the hum returns, steady, patient, as if it has all the time in the world. The sea moves in and out beside her, as if offering its own breath to hold the moment steady. Hello, Iris whispers, because whispering fits. Her voice is used to the hush of rooms and the small music of pages turning. Hello there. The shell answers with its soft human tone. Not a word she can understand, more like a shape of comfort, a reassurance that does not need explanation. She tilts her head, eyes closing without her asking them to. The morning folds around her like a shawl. For a long while, she stands listening. The world narrows, not in a pressing way, but in the way a lens narrows to bring something into focus. The cry of gulls grows distant. Footprints hers fill lightly with water and then smooth out again, a slow erasure that feels like mercy. When she finally lowers the shell and opens her eyes, the sky has shifted from pearl to pale blue. The sun has climbed the smallest step. She smiles, a soft, private bloom that touches only the corners of her mouth. She has the feeling of standing at the edge of a sentence and knowing the next word will be kind. Iris slips the shell into the pocket of her cardigan. The fabric is thin from many washings, tender at the edges, perfect for holding a small humming thing. She walks home along the brightening shore. Houses lift their blinds one by one, like eyes waking to a good dream. A fisherman waves, a dog trots ahead, looks back, approves, and goes on. She returns the wave, her palms still tingling from holding the spiral. Inside her cottage, the quiet greets her with its usual affection. The floorboards know her step and do not creak. On the table, sunlight pours over a bowl of figs and two apricots, making everything look almost gilded. Iris sets the shell on the windowsill beside a little line of smooth, pale stones. She fills the kettle and waits for it to murmur. When the first steam curls up, she lifts the shell again, as if, by reflex, the voice meets her where she left it, unhurried, sure. It is not louder indoors. It does not need to be. It arrives the way a memory arrives, carefully, in pieces, sweet enough to keep, soft enough to hold. She leans against the counter with her hip, eyes half closed, and listens. The kettle completes its sigh, and still she listens, letting the voice be the first cup of her day. Only when the water begins to cool does she make tea. She chooses the quiet mug, the one with a small chip like a crescent moon. She dips the tea bag and watches the water turn the color of amber warmed by sun. She sits by the window and lets the sea fill her vision, the shell filling her ear. Her breathing matches the tide without her trying, in and out, in and out as the waves, so the breath as the breath, so the heart. There is, inside the listening, a question, not a sharp question, not a question with corners. It is a soft curiosity, round as the shell in her hand. Who are you? The words drift through her mind, slow as kelp swaying just under the surface. She does not push for answers. She does not press. She lets the question sit beside her like a small, well-behaved companion. It is enough to know the question is kind. The day moves the way gentle days do in a seaside town. She opens the bookshop by sliding the bell on its ribbon. The bell answers with a sound that feels like a smile. Iris sets the shell on a folded napkin near the register, where a bit of sun can touch it. Customers come in twos and threes, leaving. Soft traces of weather behind them, damp cuffs, a clean wind in their hair. They speak in library voices without meaning to. They run fingertips along worn spines. They ask for stories that won't startle them. Between customers, Iris lifts the shell. Each time, the voice is there, patient as tide pools. She begins to notice the smallest shapes in the sound, the way it dips, the way it steadies, the way. At times, it seems to pause in a warm, deliberate hush, as if offering room for her to breathe. If a voice could place a blanket in a stranger's lap without fuss, it would be this voice, low, gentle, present. Once, while she is wrapping a book in brown paper for an older man who buys poems for his wife every Saturday, the voice trembles into something almost like a syllable, something like a vowel warmed between teeth. Iris pauses for only a heartbeat, smooths the twine. 'Tis a bow the way she always does, to loops, no knots that would tighten, and passes the book across. The counter, the man thanks her, the bell whispers, the door closes. Iris lifts the shell again. There is a feeling as calm as a lake that the voice is not new, not new to her bones, not new to the way her hands know to hold the shell as if it were a bird resting, unafraid. She cannot say from where, she does not try. The mind can hurry. The heart does not need to. She chooses the heart space. Lunch is simple, a slice of fresh bread, a little cheese, a peach that gives up its scent as soon as she presses a thumb to its downy skin. She eats in the doorway with her feet on the step, the shell nearby, the sea's bright line visible 2 streets down where the lane opens like a mouth to the shore. The voice hums along the line of the day. She does not grow used to it. She grows quiet with it, the way one grows quiet in a chapel simply because the air is already praying. In the afternoon, a child comes in with a damp braid and a handful of beach treasures, bits of sea glass, a small feather, a jagged spark of black stone, and asks if there are stories about mermaids who like to read. Many, Iris says, and finds one with gentle pictures of blue-green hair and a library under the waves, shelves made of coral and driftwood, books stitched from kelp and silk. She kneels to show the child the page where a mermaid presses. A shell to her ear, listening. The child presses her own little treasure to her ear and grins. I hear the ocean, she declares, and runs toward the door where a patient father waits. When the shop quiets again, Iris lifts the shell and feels the soft yes of being kept company. And in that quiet, the day slows a little more, as if agreeing. With her, the clock does not tick loudly. The light finds the dust in the air and turns it into small stars, drifting. The voice hums like twilight arriving in the middle of the afternoon. Later, when the sky begins to lean toward honey, and then, to amber, she closes the bookshop and carries the shell back to the shore. Evening is a long, pale ribbon. The first lamps in cottage windows begin to glow, small moons echoing the larger one that will rise. The sand has cooled. She walks along the tide line, taking her time. Each step seems to loosen something inside her that didn't know it was tight. She sits where the water can reach her toes and then retreat, reach and retreat, as steady as breath. She lifts the shell. The voice is there, the way distant lights are there over a dark seashore, even if indistinct. For the first time, Iris tries a word aloud. Thank you, she says. The voice, low and warm, seems to pause in a way that is not silence so much as a softened attention. She does not know why that makes her eyes gentle with almost tears, but it does. Not tears of sadness, nothing sharp, nothing heavy, only the human way we feel when something fits, when something answers a call we don't remember placing. The tide creeps up and retreats. The sky deepens. The first star is careful and kind. Iris tucks the shell back into her pocket and lies on her side, the way she did as a child on summer nights, curled, with one hand under her cheek. The sand is cool and holds her shape like a friend. The sea hums its endless lullaby. The shells. Warm curl hums its smaller one. Both sounds fold together inside her in a way that feels like two voices learning to braid. As the moon lifts a little higher, a little rounder, the town grows quieter still. Doors close softly. Footsteps hush. A breeze moves through dune grass and it sounds like pages turning. Iris opens her eyes once, then lets them close again, willing at last to be held by the evening as completely as the shore is held by the sea. She does not know his name. She does not need to, not yet. The longing she feels is not a hunger but a warmth, a tender fullness that asks only to be allowed. She draws a slow breath, and the shell hums with her, and the sea hums with them both. And in that quiet, a promise begins, light as a thread, soft as a tide line, certain as the moon. When she rises to go home, she brushes sand from her skirt and leaves no hurry behind her. The shell rides home in her pocket, warm against her palm. She closes the cottage door with the care of someone setting a book down. She sets the shell on the bedside table and turns the lamp very low. The room becomes a soft bowl of light. She lies down and pulls the quilt washed thin, faintly scented. With line-dried sun up to her shoulder, one last time she lifts the shell. The voice is waiting, as patient as kindness, as steady as breath. "Good night," Iris whispers, and as the moon drifts higher, the shell answers in its gentle, wordless way, an answer that feels like an armful of quiet, like a candle sheltered by a hand, like a home. And in that quiet, the night rests for a while inside the shell, and Iris rests inside the night. Morning returns gently, as it always does in the small seaside town. Pale light presses through linen curtains, not urgently, but in the slow way of a hand smoothing cloth. Iris wakes to the quiet rhythm of gulls beyond her window, their wings carving soft shapes across the sky. She lies still for a while, not rushing. She listens to the hush of the world, the distant sea, and then turning her head to the bedside table, the seashell waiting, curved in its spiral glow. She takes it up as one takes up a familiar book, with care, with the soft anticipation of knowing it will meet her exactly where she left it. The shell warms quickly in her hand. She lifts it to her ear. The voice hums, low, unhurried, not a word she can yet grasp, but something like a thread drawn slowly through fabric, something steady and close. She closes her eyes, lets the sound wash through her. She feels it settle in her chest, as if the voice is speaking directly to the heart, not the ear. Iris smiles without thinking. The voice is no longer startling. It is becoming a companion. She carries the shell into her morning as one carries a quiet secret. At the small wooden table by the window, she slices an apple, adds honey to her tea, and rests the shell nearby. Sometimes she pauses mid-bite just to touch it, to let the voice hum softly, like a lullaby sung not to a child but to the very air itself. Outside, the town stirs. A cart's wheel hums against cobblestones. Someone hums while sweeping a stoop. Doors open. Dogs bark. Life is simple here, ordinary, but tender in its simplicity. Iris slips the shell into the pocket of her cardigan before stepping out. Her path to the bookshop takes her along the curve of the shore. Today she notices things she had not before. The way sea foam leaves lace patterns on the sand, the way Wet driftwood gleams almost silver in the morning sun. She wonders if the shell, if the voice inside, has taught her to listen more closely. At the shop. She sets the shell in its place on the folded napkin. The bell above the door greets her. With a hushed ring, she dusts shelves, arranges books in tidy stacks, places a sprig of rosemary in a glass jar by the counter. All the while, the shell waits quietly, humming only when she leans close, as if respecting her pace. That afternoon, a gentle restlessness visits her, not a sharp kind, but soft, like a breeze that changes its mind halfway across the sea. She feels a pull to walk farther than she usually does, beyond the bookshop, beyond the pier where the fishermen tie their boats, beyond the cottages that dot the first stretch of shore. She closes the shop early, tying a note to the door, back at dawn. She carries the shell in a small woven bag and sets out along the coast. The path is sandy at first, then turns grassy, the kind of grass that bends without complaint under the wind. The sea moves beside her, a constant companion, its breath steady and wide. Each step feels like walking into a softer rhythm of the world. The houses thin, then fade entirely. The land opens. Dunes rise and fall, gentle and low, stitched with dune grass and pale flowers shaped like little stars. She pauses often, not because she is tired, but because stopping feels as important as walking. She lets the breeze lift her hair. She listens to the waves as they echo off the shore, and when she lifts the shell, the voice answers again, steady, close, as if reminding her she is not alone. The sound shifts subtly today. Not louder, not clearer, just a shade warmer, as if leaning nearer. A pause, a low note, a hum that almost shapes itself into her name. Iris, her breath catches not in fear, but in the deep hush of recognition. Did she hear it truly? Or did the heart supply what the ear could not? She presses the shell closer, listening. The voice steadies again into its wordless music, flowing like tidewater through her chest. She smiles, shakes her head gently, and continues on. The sun lowers, turning the sea to molten gold. Ahead, where the dunes soften into a crescent of untouched beach, she sees driftwood arranged like a seat, as though someone has placed it there deliberately. She sits. The sand is cool now, the kind that cradles instead of shifting. She draws the shell out of her bag. The hum greets her, tender, unhurried. She whispers, "I don't know who you are, but it feels like I do." The shell hums as if answering in agreement, as if silence itself were speaking back. She lingers until the first stars blink awake. The sky deepens to velvet. The waves hush themselves. In that stillness, she feels something she cannot name, not loneliness, not longing exactly, but a soft invitation, as if the world is asking her to listen closer, walk further, dream deeper. When she finally rises, the moonlight falls across the path like silver threads, guiding her home. She carries the shell close against her chest, as though it were a lantern, not of light, but of voice. And in that quiet journey, Iris feels the first stirrings of something new, a tenderness blooming not from within her alone, but as though the sea itself is keeping her company, whispering her name through a voice carried in a shell. The next morning arrives soft and silver, the sea spread like silk beneath a pale sky. Iris wakes with a sense of expectancy that feels new to her light, like a thread tugging her gently forward. The seashell rests where she left it on the bedside table. She lifts it, and as always, the voice greets her, low, unhurried, like a breath meant only for her. This time, though, it feels different. Not louder, not clearer, but as if the voice is leaning closer, as though it wishes to be heard not only in her ear but in her life. Iris presses the shell to her chest, smiles softly, and whispers, "I'll listen." That afternoon, she closes her bookshop a little earlier than usual. She cannot explain why. Perhaps it is the warmth in the air, or the way the tide seems to call more gently than before. She slips the shell into her cardigan pocket and walks the familiar path along the shore. The sea is calm, its waves arriving in long, even sighs. Gulls float without hurry, letting the wind carry them. The sand beneath her feet is cool, patterned with the tide's handwriting. She follows the curve of the coast until she reaches the crescent beach she found yesterday, the one edged by dunes and driftwood. And there, seated on the driftwood, is someone, a man writing in a notebook, his hand moving slowly across the page. The sight startles her only for a breath, then settles into a feeling that is not surprise but recognition, as if he belongs here, as if he has always been here. He looks up when he senses her approach. His gaze is steady, kind, the kind of gaze that does not intrude but welcomes. His hair is touched with salt wind, a little tousled, and his clothes are simple linen shirt, sleeves rolled back, trousers faintly dusted with sand. A poet, she thinks, though the word feels less like a label and more like an atmosphere around him. "Good evening," he says, his voice low and warm. The seashell in her pocket hums at once. A faint vibration, a glow she almost imagines, as if the voice inside has recognized its own source. Iris pauses, her breath caught in the quietest way, her palm pressing unconsciously to the shell. "Good evening," she replies, her words soft, careful. The man gestures gently to the driftwood beside him. "There's room if you'd like to sit." She does. The sand is cool, the air kind. They face the horizon together, where the sun lowers in ribbons of pale gold and rose. For a while, neither speaks. The quiet between them feels like a third. "Companion peaceful, unhurried, necessary at last," she asks. "What are you writing?" He glances at the notebook, then at her. His smile is modest, almost shy. "Only what the sea tells me, words that feel like they're meant to be remembered, even if no one else ever reads them." Iris stilts her head, curious. "Would you read one?" He nods slowly, turning a page. His voice, when he begins, is soft but sure. He reads a short piece, just a handful of lines about the sea moving in and out like breath, about the way shells carry voices long after the tide has turned. And as he reads, the shell in her pocket hums stronger, its warmth threading up through her chest. She touches it discreetly, and the voice inside matches his, a quiet harmony that makes her heart fold into stillness. When he finishes, silence lingers. The waves applaud softly at the shore. Iris exhales as though she has been holding her breath for longer than she knew. "That was beautiful," she says gently. He lowers his eyes, smiles with humility. "Thank you." The shell hums again, a low echo, a reflection of the same words. They sit as the sky deepens into twilight. The first stars open like tiny lanterns. The air cools, carrying with it the smell of salt and seagrass. They speak, not much, but enough about small things, simple things. She tells him of her bookshop. He tells her he walks the shore most evenings, listening, writing. He never forces conversation, never presses. Each pause between words feels safe, as if silence is not emptiness but a gift they can share. When the moon lifts its soft round face above the horizon, Iris realizes she has not once thought of leaving. The company is gentle, familiar in a way. She cannot explain. The shell stays warm in her pocket, as if listening too, as if it has been waiting for this. When at last she rises, the man closes his notebook and stands with her. They do not exchange names, not yet. It does not feel necessary. Names can come later. What matters now is the quiet recognition, the hum of something beginning without rush. She turns to go, but before she steps away, he says softly, "Perhaps I'll see you here again." Iris meets his gaze. There is no urgency in his voice, only a tender suggestion, like a shell left on a doorstep. She nods once, her smile faint but sure. Perhaps she walks home under the moonlight, her pocket warm with the hum of the shell, her heart steady and light. Each step feels as though she is carrying more than herself, and in that quiet she knows, the voice that has kept her company is no longer only inside the shell. It is here in the air, in the man who writes poetry into the sea, the days that follow drift like waves, steady, unhurried, each carrying Iris a little closer to something she has longed for without ever naming. She still tends her shop, still wraps books in brown paper, still ties them with twine as delicately as if she were tying together the hours of the day. But now, woven into her rhythm, there is a quiet anticipation, as soft as a tide pulling. At the shore, each evening, she carries the shell in her cardigan pocket and walks the path along the sand. And each evening, she finds him there always seated on the driftwood, his notebook resting across his knee, his hand moving gently, listening to the sea.t first. They speak only in fragments, a comment about the waves, the way the stars arrive. Earlier each night, the softness of the wind, but soon words lengthen. They share small pieces of themselves, not with urgency, but as one places shells along a windowsill, one at a time, each chosen, each meaningful. Iris tells him about her shop. He tells her about the way he began writing as a boy, placing words in bottles and sending them into the tide, wondering if the sea would deliver them somewhere they belonged. And always, when he speaks, the shell hums low and sure in her pocket. A gentle resonance that makes her heart soften, makes her breath slow. One evening, the air is unusually still. The tide comes in almost silently, folding itself over the sand like the hem of a garment. The man is already waiting on the driftwood. He looks up as Iris approaches, his gaze calm, expectant. She sits beside him, and after a moment of silence, he says, "Would you like to hear something I wrote today?" She nods. He opens his notebook, and the words come like seafoam light, tender, dissolving into the air even as they are spoken. Some voices are carried by the wind, some are carried by the sea, and some are carried by silence itself, waiting for the one who will recognize them. As the words leave his lips, the shell in her pocket grows warm. She slips her hand inside, lifts it to her ear, and the hum is no longer just a hum, it is his voice, speaking the very words she has just heard, the same cadence, the same quiet warmth. She looks at him, eyes wide but softened by wonder. "It's you," she whispers. He tilts his head, gentle curiosity in his gaze. "What do you mean?" Wordlessly, she offers him the shell. He takes it carefully, as if he knows instinctively that it is precious. He lifts it to his ear. For a long moment, his eyes remain closed. Then they open, shining not with surprise, but with recognition. "It's been you," he says softly, as though speaking not only to her but to the sea itself. All this time, the evening deepens around them, sky folding into indigo, the first stars scattering like seeds. Neither of them needs to explain further. The truth rests quietly between them, clear and undeniable. His words, spoken to the sea, have found her. The shell has carried them, kept them, offered them back to the one meant to hear. They sit in silence, side by side, the shell resting in her palm, glowing faintly with the warmth of a tide that has finally returned home. The sea breathes evenly. Their shoulders almost touch, close enough that Iris feels the comfort of his presence radiating gently toward her. He looks out at the horizon. "I always wondered," he murmurs, "if anyone would ever hear me." She turns her head, studies him for a moment, then whispers, "I did." And in that quiet, there is nothing more to say. Later, when the moon is high and the waves have drawn silver threads across the shore, Iris stands to go. He rises too, not out of formality, but as if it is the natural rhythm of things. They rise together. She holds the shell to her chest, then looks at him, her voice low. "Will you be here tomorrow?" He nods. His smile is small, steady, always. They part with no farewell, only a look that lingers, gentle and sure. She walks home slowly, her footsteps sinking softly into the sand. The shell hums against her chest. Her heart hums with it. And in that quiet, Iris knows she is no longer walking alone. The voice that once lived only in the shell has stepped into the air, into the man beside her, into the tender unfolding of something that feels both new and timeless. The next evening arrives like a soft promise. Clouds drift low across the horizon, tinted lavender by the falling sun. The tide moves quietly, as though it too wishes to be gentle. Iris walks along the familiar path, her footsteps light in the sand, her hand resting over the pocket where the shell hums with a patient warmth. She does not hurry, yet her heart moves ahead of her, steady and certain, as if it knows where she is going before her body arrives. And as before, he is there. Seated on the driftwood, notebook set aside, hands resting loosely in his lap. When he sees her, he stands not with urgency, but with ease, as though the simple act of rising to greet her is natural, almost instinctive. They meet in silence, and the silence is enough. Tonight, she does not sit at once. Instead, she holds out the shell to him, resting it in her open palm. "Will you listen with me?" she asks, her voice barely above the hush of the waves. He nods, and together they sit. The shell rests between them on the driftwood, its curved lip tilted upward, as though offering its sound to the air. Iris leans close, her shoulder brushing his, and he leans in as well. Their heads are nearly touching as they listen. The shell hums, not just in her ear, not just in his, but in the space between them, a low, steady tone that feels alive, as if it belongs not to one or the other, but to both. The sound folds into the rhythm of the tide, into the breath of the night, until it seems the whole world is speaking in the same voice. Iris closes her eyes. She feels his presence beside her, the warmth of him, the quiet steadiness she feels. The hum in her chest, in her fingertips, in the air itself. And for the first time, she realizes that she no longer longs to know what the words mean. The sound itself is enough. The company is enough. Time drifts, slow and generous. Stars bloom across the sky, one by one, until the heavens are scattered. With light, the sea, silvered by the moon, spreads in long ribbons to the horizon. They do not move, save for the small adjustments of breathing, the occasional brush of a sleeve, the shell glowing softly in their shared listening. When at last she opens her eyes, she finds him watching the sea, his expression calm, unguarded. She studies the way the moonlight touches his hair, the way his hands rest without tension, the way his stillness feels like a harbor. She thinks, here is someone who belongs to quiet. As if sensing her gaze, he turns to her. Their eyes meet. And for a long, unmeasured moment, neither looks away. The world feels hushed, suspended, as though even the waves pause to watch. No words pass between them, yet something whole is exchanged. Not a declaration, not a confession, only a recognition, a gentle knowing that does not need to be named later. When the tide creeps higher and brushes the tips of their shoes, Iris lifts the shell once more. She presses it to her ear, then, after a pause, places it in his hand. "Keep it," she whispers. He looks at her, almost startled, then shakes his head softly. "It has always been yours," but she closes his fingers around it, her touch light. Certain, it was only ever waiting for us. The shell hums, low and steady, as if agreeing. They walk back together along the moonlit shore, unhurried, their footsteps aligning easily in the sand. They do not need to fill the air with words. The quiet between them is full enough. When they reach the place where their paths part, hers toward the town, his farther along the beach, they pause. She turns to him, her cardigan pulled close, the breeze lifting her hair. "Tomorrow?" she asks softly. He nods, smiling in that small, steady way that feels like a promise. "Tomorrow." She watches him go, the shell cradled in his hand, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Then she turns toward home, her heart resting in a peace deeper than she has ever known. That night, lying beneath her quilt, Iris feels no need to lift another shell to her ear. The hum is already within her, threaded through her breath, through the memory of their quiet companionship. She drifts into sleep as though carried on a tide, safe and unhurried, her last thought a simple one: "I am not alone." And in that peace, the sea outside her window hushes itself, as if standing guard over her dreams. The final days of summer drift by in a hush of gold and silver. Each evening, Iris and the man walk the shore together, sometimes with the shell, sometimes without. They need it less now, yet they keep it close, not as a necessity but as a quiet witness to how they came to meet. The shell no longer belongs to one or the other, it belongs to the space between them. Some nights, Iris carries it in her pocket. Other nights, he slips it into his. When they sit together on the driftwood, they place it in the sand at their feet, where it hums softly, like a lamp that glows not with light but with presence. The sea, as if pleased, grows gentler with them. Waves arrive in longer sighs, breezes soften. Even the stars seem to gather more closely overhead, as though they too wish to listen. One evening they walk farther than usual, following the line of the coast until the town is a scatter of lanterns. In the distance, the sand here is untouched, smooth as parchment. They leave two lines of footprints, side by side, fading slowly behind them. They do not rush. Their conversation comes and goes, but often it rests in silence. When words appear, they are simple, honest, the taste of salt on the air, the sound of wind moving through dune grass, the way the moon looks when it rises from the horizon. A T. One point, Iris laughs softly, just a small breath of sound, unguarded. He turns his head at once, smiling at the sound, as though it is something rare and precious. She feels the warmth of his gaze and lets her eyes linger on his, long enough for the night itself to fold closer around them. The shell hums faintly. In his hand, he lifts it, presses it once to his ear, then holds it out to her. When she takes it, the hum is not only sound, it feels like the echo of his voice, the memory of his words, the steady rhythm of his presence. She lowers it slowly, their hands brushing as it passes between them. The touch is small, but it settles into her like moonlight on water. They find a place where the sand rises slightly, a soft hill overlooking the sea. There they sit together, the shell resting between them. The horizon glimmers silver, the tide folding in and out like a lullaby. Neither speaks. The silence is complete, yet full. Iris leans slightly, just enough for her shoulder to meet his. He does not move away. Instead, he shifts so their closeness feels natural, as though the evening has always been meant to hold them like this. Time dissolves, the sea hums, the shell hums, and somewhere within it all, the world slows to the pace of breath and tide. When the moon reaches its highest point, casting a soft road of light across the water, Iris whispers the only words she finds. Necessary. I hear you. His reply is not immediate. He turns his head, looks at her with a gaze that holds both gentleness and certainty. Then he answers, voice low and sure, and I hear you. The shell hums once more, as if the sea itself has joined their quiet vow. They remain until the horizon begins to pale, until the stars retreat one by one into the coming day. When they rise, they walk back together, their footprints forming a single path where two lines have blurred. The shell rests in his pocket, humming faintly with each step, but Iris no longer feels the need to hold it constantly to her ear. The voice she once searched for lives now in the air beside her, in the man whose presence steadies her steps, in the silence they share. Back in her cottage, she lies beneath her quilt, her body sinking into rest. She drifts into sleep with the sea in her ears, with his voice folded into memory, with the peace of knowing she will find him again tomorrow. The shell glows faintly on the windowsill, the sea hums just beyond the glass, and the night wraps her. Gently, and in that quiet, the story softens into stillness, two souls carried together by the sea, two voices braided into one hush, their future stretching gently ahead like a tide without end. And now, dear listener, you too may let go. Let your breath match the sea's rhythm, slow, steady, kind. Let the story rest within you, as soft as a shell against your palm. Drift into sleep as Iris drifts, safe and unhurried, carried by the tide of a voice that has always known how to be gentle. Good night.